What do you do when your own wife tells everyone you agreed to an open relationship, but you never did? How far can someone twist the truth before a single text message finally exposes everything? This is how I went from the jealous villain in her story to the man who let 4 words on my friend's screen end our marriage in a courthouse lobby. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Alden, and if you asked my wife to describe our marriage, she would probably say we are modern, free, and open. If you asked me, I would say I learned about our open relationship from her posts and her friends' jokes, not from any real agreement between us. For a long time, I believed that staying calm and steady would protect our home. I thought if I did my work, paid the bills, and stayed loyal, the storms would pass over us. Instead, my silence became her proof. She told people I was fine with her exploring, that I had given my blessing, that I was just a little jealous, but learning to grow. When I tried to say I was not okay, she called me controlling and old-fashioned. Then my own friends started acting like a man with special permission, smiling at me while standing a little too close to her. The night I saw his SMS light up on his phone, 4 small words aimed at my wife. Something inside me finally stopped trying to explain itself. I did not scream, break anything, or hit anyone. I simply decided this story would end in a different place. I heard the words open relationship in my own kitchen. I was standing at the counter buttering toast for our daughter before school. The morning was ordinary in every visible way. The kettle hummed, the radio played quietly, and Lena scrolled her phone while sipping coffee. She mentioned that she had listened to a podcast about couples who chose to keep things open. She said it in a light tone, almost like a joke, as if we were talking about trying a new restaurant. I smiled politely and asked what she meant, and she said that some people believed love should not be owned and that monogamy was just a social habit. I answered that I was fine being old-fashioned if old-fashioned meant keeping promises. She gave me a look that made me feel like I had failed a test I did not know we were taking. Later that day, when I came home from work, she brought it up again. She said that we had been together a long time and that people changed. She suggested that having more freedom could actually make us stronger because then no one would feel trapped. I reminded her that when we married, we had both promised to be with each other only. She replied that she still loved me, but she did not want to feel like a piece of furniture in her own life. The words sounded practiced, like something she had repeated in her head or to someone else already. I felt a small knot tighten in my stomach, but I kept my voice calm and said I was not comfortable opening anything. That night, in bed, she turned away from me with her phone in her hand. The soft light from the screen lit the side of her face. She said that she did not understand why I was so afraid of even talking about change. She added that we were not teenagers and that grown adults could make their own rules. I said that I did not feel afraid, only clear. I told her that I did not want more partners, and I did not want her to have them either. She sighed and said I was proving her point about me being too rigid. She said that she had hoped I would surprise her and show more flexibility. My chest felt heavy, but I did not raise my voice or try to grab the phone. I simply lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering when my simple wish for loyalty had become something to apologize for. In the following days, she started using the word open more often, mostly around her friends. One afternoon, I walked into the living room while she was on a video call. She did not notice me at first. I heard her laugh and say that I was still adjusting to the idea and that we were talking about being more open as a couple. The friend on the screen clapped and said something I could not hear. When Lena realized I was there, she smiled and told the friend that I was listening, then joked that I was the shy traditionalist in the experiment. After she ended the call, I asked her quietly when we had started to experiment. She said that she was just easing people into the idea and that I was overreacting. I remembered how, in the early years, she used to talk about us as a team. She would tell people that I was her safe place, the calm in her storms. Now she described me as a nervous anchor holding her back from an exciting life. Nothing about my behavior had changed that much. I still went to work, came home, and took care of our daughter. The only new thing was the way she spoke about me, as if she needed me to be the villain in a story about her freedom. One evening, my mother called. She had seen a short post from Lena where she mentioned building a new model of love, and joked about her husband learning the language of openness. My mother asked gently if everything was fine. She did not accuse anyone. She only said she hoped we were talking to each other and not just to our phones. I told her we were discussing things and that I wanted to handle it calmly. When I hung up, I felt torn between wanting to tell her everything and wanting to protect her from the details. My father, when he heard pieces of it later, was more direct. He said that times were different now and that some people did things he did not understand. He suggested that I should not panic just because Lena wanted to talk about new ideas. He hinted that men needed to adapt or risk losing their wives. His words, even if he meant them as advice, made me feel smaller, as if my wish for a simple promise was childish instead of clear. That same week, Lena's mother sent a message in the family chat, congratulating her on being brave enough to define her own happiness. She added a comment about how some men were lucky to have women who did not just settle for boring lives. I recognized myself in the word boring. I also recognized the approval in Lena's quick reply. Up to that point, I still told myself these were just words and posts, a cloud of talk that might pass. Then one night, I walked into the hallway and heard Lena on the phone in the bedroom with the door half closed. She told someone that she and I had basically agreed to be open now, and that I was slow but getting there. She laughed in a way I had not heard in a long time, full and carefree. It sounded less like the laugh of a wife talking about her husband, and more like the laugh of a woman telling a fun secret about a man who did not matter much. I stood on the stairwell landing, halfway between the bedroom and the small desk where I sometimes worked at night. The light from the bedroom spilled out in a thin bar across the floor. I did not walk in. Instead, I went to the desk, sat down, and opened the Notes app on my phone. I wrote the date, the time, and a simple sentence. She says we agreed to open. I said clearly that I did not. I added a few words about how she described me as adjusting, even though nothing in me had moved. I did not add feelings, only facts, because I sensed that facts would matter later more than my emotions. When I finished typing, I tapped into my calendar almost without thinking. A reminder stared back at me, one I had set months earlier during a stressful period at work. Riverside Path, 6:45 a.m. Back then, it had been a plan for an early morning walk to clear my head. I had never actually gone. Now it looked like an invitation from an earlier version of myself, a man who believed that air and time were enough to solve problems. I stared at the reminder and thought that maybe I should finally use that small space by the river to think properly. I set the phone down on the desk for a moment, then picked it up again and returned to the bedroom. The light was dim. Lena lay with her back to me, phone on the nightstand. I slipped under the covers, trying not to disturb her. As I turned to plug my phone into the charger, her screen lit up for a second. A text preview appeared from a contact saved with a single heart emoji. The message read, "We'll talk more about the open thing later," followed by a small smile symbol. The preview vanished as the screen went dark again, but the words stayed bright in my mind, telling me that our conversation about openness already had a third voice I had never invited. At the office the next morning, everything around me looked the same, but my thoughts felt different. I walked through the glass doors, nodded to the receptionist, and took my usual path past the rows of desks. The open plan room buzzed with low voices and keyboard clicks, the ordinary sounds of people fixing problems and sending emails. I sat down, logged in, and told myself that here, at least, there were clear rules. A broken system did not lie about what was wrong. It just showed an error, and you fixed it. For the first hour, work wrapped around me like a thin coat. I answered a few tickets, reset a locked account, and helped someone connect to the printer. I tried to let the tasks pull me away from the memory of the message on Lena's phone, the heart emoji contact, and the words about the open thing. I told myself I did not know who it was yet, that maybe I was reading too much into a single line. Still, the words kept replaying in the back of my mind while I typed. Around mid-morning, Samir rolled his chair over to my desk. He had his phone in his hand and that half-smile people wear when they are about to say something they think is funny, but are not sure if they should. He asked if I had seen Lena's new story. I said I had not been online much last night. He turned the phone toward me. On the screen was a short video of Lena sitting on our couch, talking to the camera. The caption said, "Teaching my husband the language of open love." In the video, she said some people thought openness was scary, but that she believed freedom and honesty made relationships stronger. She added that her husband was still a little old school, but that he was trying to learn. At the bottom of the screen, I saw a familiar name in the viewer list, Mark Ellis. He was a friend from years ago, someone I had played games with and met for drinks once in a while. Under the story, he had reacted with a fire emoji and the words, "Proud of you two." It took me a second to process the idea that my friend was now cheering for a change in my marriage that I had never agreed to. Samir laughed lightly and said I was brave. He made a small joke about how most men would lose their minds if their wives started talking about open relationships on social media. I handed the phone back and said Lena liked to talk in big ideas, that she enjoyed getting reactions from people. My voice sounded calm, but I could feel the skin on my neck grow warm. Samir looked at me for a second and asked more softly if this was really what I wanted. I told him we were still just talking and that I preferred to keep things private. He nodded and did not push further, but the question stayed with me after he rolled away. At lunch, I went to the break room to make coffee. 2 colleagues were already there, leaning against the counter, talking while the kettle boiled. One of them said she had seen Lena's story and thought it was cool that we were so modern. The other said she did not know if she could ever do that, but she admired people who were honest about needing more. When they noticed me, they smiled, and one of them said I must be very secure to allow that kind of freedom. The word allow hit me in a strange way. I corrected them gently, saying I had not allowed anything yet, we were just in a difficult conversation. One of them laughed and said she understood, that men sometimes needed time to adjust when women took the lead. The other joked that as long as I did not freak out and start banning friends, things would be fine. I stirred sugar into my coffee and listened to the spoon tap against the mug so I would not say something I would regret. I took a slow breath and replied that if any real changes happened, I wanted them to be based on clear agreement, not public assumptions. They nodded, but I could tell the story they believed was still the one Lena had told, not the one I was trying to explain. Back at my desk, I opened a blank spreadsheet instead of my email. For a few seconds, I just stared at the empty cells. Then I wrote events at the top. In the first row, I typed the date from last night, the one on which I heard her tell someone we had basically agreed to be open now. Under location, I wrote bedroom phone call, home. Under description, I wrote, she told someone we agreed to be open. I had said clearly that I did not. In the next row, I added this morning's date, Instagram story, her account, and a short description of the video Samir had shown me. I included the phrase about me learning the language of open love and noted that Mark had reacted with support. I kept my language simple and dry. I did not write that I felt betrayed or small. I wrote what had happened, where, and who had seen it. When I finished the first few lines, I saved the spreadsheet under a name that would not catch anyone's eye if they glanced at the screen. Saving it felt like placing a tiny stone on a growing pile. Each stone by itself was small. Together, they weighed something. Later in the afternoon, my manager, Caroline, sent me a message asking if I had a moment to talk. We stepped over to a quieter corner near the windows, where we could still see the office but not be heard easily. She said she had picked up some comments in the break room about my private life and wanted to check in. She was careful with her words. She said she did not care what kind of relationship I chose, but she did care if gossip or teasing made me uncomfortable at work. I told her I appreciated her asking. I said there were some serious conversations happening at home, but that I did not want to drag the office into them. I added that if behavior here crossed a line, I would handle it through the proper channels, not through side comments or anger. She nodded and said that was the right approach, and reminded me that there were clear procedures if I needed support. I went back to my desk and added another line to my spreadsheet. Manager checked if gossip is an issue. I said I will use formal process if needed. Again, just facts. In the late afternoon, a message popped up in the office social group chat. Someone had shared a screenshot of another short post from Lena. This one had a photo of 2 wine glasses on our coffee table and the words, "Talking to hubby about our open future. Growth is messy, but worth it." Underneath, one coworker commented, "Man, Alden is on another level of cool," and another wrote, "Hope you're taking notes for us, bro." My stomach tightened, but I did not answer. I muted the conversation and closed the chat window. The sound of people laughing drifted from the far end of the room. I could not hear the words, only the tone, a mix of amusement and curiosity. I turned my chair so I faced my monitor directly, as if that simple movement could block out the noise. Then I opened my calendar. A small reminder was set for later that week. Harbor Bench, 7:20 a.m. Meeting, personal. I had created it on a restless night without fully deciding whether I would actually go. Now, as I watched the reminder glow on the screen, it felt less like an idea and more like a promise I needed to keep to myself. A second later, my phone buzzed quietly on the desk. A new notification appeared, the same group chat ping, showing another joke about my open marriage, and the calendar reminder slid across the top at the same time, repeating, Harbor Bench, 7:20 a.m., meeting, personal. I let the notifications sit there for a few seconds before I dismissed them. The office noise went on as usual, but inside me something had shifted. I understood that while Lena was teaching the world how open we were, I was the only one still trying to close my hands around the truth. The first time I saw Lena and Mark together in a crowd where everyone else already believed the open relationship story, I felt like I was standing in the wrong play. It was a Friday night at a neighborhood bar that tried to be both casual and stylish, with dim lights, loud music, and a small area at the back where people could dance or just lean against high tables. Lena said it would be good for me to come, that it would show everyone we were on the same page. She used that phrase in a light, cheerful tone, as if we had written the page together. I knew we had not, but I went anyway, partly to see how far the story had spread, and partly because I did not want to stay home imagining it. When we arrived, Mark was already there with a drink in his hand, talking to a small group from his company. He greeted me with a hug and a pat on the back, as if nothing in our lives had changed. He told people that I was his oldest friend and that we had known each other since our early 20s. He said it with warmth, and for a second I remembered late-night games and shared jokes from years before, when loyalty meant something simple. Then Lena joined us, and the air around the three of us shifted. She stood between us, one hand on my arm and one on his shoulder, like she was presenting a balanced picture. Soon the conversation turned toward relationships, because that was the topic she carried everywhere now. She told the group that some couples were brave enough to accept that no one person could meet all their needs. She said she and her husband had talked about being more open and that I was still learning, but trying hard. Mark added that he respected men who did not try to own their partners. People nodded and smiled, and a few of them looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and admiration, as if I was some advanced model of partner they could not imagine being. Inside, I felt like someone had reached into my chest and twisted something. On the outside, I stayed calm. I said that we were indeed in a difficult conversation about what we wanted our marriage to be. I did not confirm that I had agreed to anything beyond that. Lena laughed and told the group I always spoke like a contract, not like a human being. She said that was why she had to translate our love life into plain language. The group laughed obligingly. I watched Mark's face as he listened. He did not look surprised by anything she said. That told me more than his words. Later in the evening, some people moved toward the small dance area, and others spread out among the high tables. Lena and Mark ended up at a table near the back wall. I stood nearby, close enough to hear, but far enough that they could pretend I was not part of the circle. Lena spoke with energy. She described our marriage as something that had needed fresh air, and she said that the open idea had actually made us closer. She mentioned to two women from Mark's office that he had been helping her understand her own desires and independence. One of them joked that it must be strange for me to share my wife with my friend. Lena answered that it was not sharing, it was expanding. The word made my jaw tighten. At one point, Mark stepped away to get drinks. I followed him to the bar. When we were side by side, waiting for the bartender, he said that Lena had told him I was more relaxed now about everything. He said he admired that, because most men would react badly if their wives wanted to explore. He spoke like I had given him a quiet green light, and now he felt obligated to thank me for it. I told him, in a steady voice, that I had not given any such light. I said that I had listened to a lot of talk, but I had not agreed to my wife having other partners, especially not from our circle. He frowned and said that Lena had explained things differently, that she had said I was on board as long as she was honest. I repeated that I had never agreed to that, and that if he was going to continue this path with her, he should not hide behind my supposed consent. He looked uncomfortable, then quickly said he did not want any drama and that he trusted what she told him. The way he said it made it clear that, for him, her version carried more weight than mine. The drinks arrived. We carried them back to the table, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics, but something had been placed down between us that would not move again. As the night went on, the music grew louder and the lights felt softer. People loosened up. Someone suggested a toast to modern love. It started as a joke, but then someone else lifted a phone and said they should record a short video for social media. Lena liked the idea right away. She moved closer to Mark, putting an arm around his waist. I stood on the other side, still at her shoulder, but the way she angled her body made it clear which side of the frame she cared about. The friend with the phone held it up, and everyone leaned in. While they arranged themselves, I stepped back 1/2 meter, just enough that I could see the screen and all their faces. I watched as Lena told the group that some people were brave enough to let love be bigger than old rules. She said she was lucky because her husband accepted her need for an open connection, and that her friend understood her in a way that did not limit her. Her hand pressed into Mark's side when she said the words open connection. People cheered and clinked glasses, the kind of reaction you might hear for a promotion or an engagement. The phone camera captured everything, its small red dot glowing at the top of the screen. I saw my own face in the corner of the frame, half in shadow, raising a glass with a polite expression. I realized in that moment that this short, cheering video could be used as proof of my supposed consent. Anyone watching it later would see my calm eyes and quiet smile and assume I was fine with all of it. Lena would say that I had been there, that I had toasted, that I had supported them. I felt a sudden urge to step forward and stop the recording, to say in front of everyone that the story they were celebrating was built on a lie. Instead, I wrapped my fingers around my glass and held my shoulders steady. I told myself that shouting would only become another scene she could twist, so I did what I had been doing for weeks. I memorized details, I noted who stood where, who recorded, who cheered, and which phrases she used when she talked about my supposed acceptance. When the video ended, the friend lowered the phone and said they had to post it. Lena laughed and told her to tag it with something about open hearts. Mark leaned in to watch the screen as they chose a filter. I stepped away toward the hallway that led to the restrooms. From there, I could still see the glow of the phone as they edited. I slipped my own phone from my pocket, opened my notes, and wrote another short line. Bar video, Lena says I accept open connection with Mark. I did not agree. As I finished typing, a burst of laughter rose from the table, followed by a chant about modern love. The friend raised the phone again to film a quick second clip of everyone cheering for No Rules. The camera flash flared across the room, catching Lena and Mark pressed close and catching me at the edge once more, half lit, half in shadow. In my mind, I marked that flash as the hook that pulled the next part of my life forward, a small burst of light that showed me exactly how they would later claim I had agreed and how carefully I would need to remember that I had not. The family dinner happened on a Sunday evening in a bright restaurant that smelled of fried food and birthday candles, the kind of place where balloons hang on the chairs and children run between tables while adults pretend nothing serious can happen under paper banners. It was my mother's idea at first, just a quiet meal with both families and Ella, but once Lena heard, she said it would be the perfect chance to show everyone we're fine and modern. I heard those words and knew they meant something different to her than to me, but I agreed because I was tired of letting our story be told in small pieces and side comments. We arrived slightly late. Lena walked in ahead of me with Ella's hand in hers, waving at our parents and her sister, while I followed carrying the gift bag and jackets. My mother, Ruth, smiled when she saw us, relief softening her face for a moment. My father, Joel, gave me a brief nod that said he was watching everything closely. On the other side of the long table, Lena's mother, Marta, rose to hug her daughter with loud praise about how glowing she looked, and her father, Stefan, gave a shy smile from behind his menu. Mia sat near the middle, her phone already in her hand, ready to capture something for later. We took our seats. Lena placed herself between Mia and Marta, leaving Ella between me and my mother. It looked casual, but it also made sure she was at the center of attention, not us together. For the first few minutes, conversation stayed on safe topics. People asked about work, about Ella's school, about the upcoming holidays. I let myself hope that maybe the night would stay that way, just a noisy meal where the heaviest problem was choosing dessert. That ended when Mia mentioned that some of her friends followed Lena online and thought her recent posts about relationships were very brave. She asked with a smile that was half teasing and half serious, "No, if we had really gone open, like the stories suggested." The table went quieter than the room around us. There was clatter and music everywhere else, but our little slice of air tightened. Lena smoothed her napkin and said it was good that people were finally asking direct questions instead of whispering. She said yes, we had decided to rethink what marriage meant, and that we were working through an open model that allowed more honesty and freedom. She added that I was still adjusting, but that she was proud of me for trying. The words landed in front of my parents and hers like small grenades wrapped in ribbon. My mother blinked twice, then asked gently if we were both comfortable with this change. Lena laughed and said my mother was sweet, but too old-fashioned to understand. She said the important thing was that we were honest and that I was learning not to let jealousy control me. I felt Ella's hand tighten around my arm under the table. My father cleared his throat and asked if this meant we were seeing other people. Before I could answer, Marta jumped in. She said the old model of marriage was broken and that women like Lena were finally brave enough to admit it. She added that it was better to have an honest, open relationship than a fake faithful one where everyone lied. Her eyes flicked toward me when she said fake faithful, as if she was hinting I had never really done my part. I set my fork down quietly and kept my voice level. I said that, from my side, I had not agreed to my wife having other partners, especially not from our close circle, and that I had not taken any myself. I said we had argued about the idea of openness, but that I had never given my consent. I did not mention Mark by name. I simply said there were lines I believed we should not cross. Lena shook her head and told everyone I was twisting things because I felt threatened. She said we had talked about being open and that I had basically agreed as long as she was honest. She said if I wanted to change my mind now and pretend I had never agreed, that was my fear speaking. Marta nodded firmly, saying men always rewrote history when their pride was hurt. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it, then finally said in a soft voice that promises still meant something to some people, and that redefining a marriage without both hearts truly agreeing sounded more like pressure than freedom. Joel looked torn. He said he did not understand all this modern talk, but he knew one thing, which was that if there was a child involved, adults should avoid turning their relationship into a show. Mia rolled her eyes and muttered that the internet was just a tool for truth, not a show. Ella stayed quiet, staring at her plate. At one point, she leaned toward my ear and whispered if open meant her mother would get another boyfriend. I told her we would talk later, somewhere quieter. Dessert menus came and went. People tried to move the conversation toward lighter subjects, but the tension hung there, floating above plates like invisible smoke. Lena made a few more jokes about me being the last loyal man in the city, twisting the words into something mocking instead of kind. She told Mia that she worked hard to explain to me that jealousy was not love, and Mia laughed and said she should start a podcast. My mother gave me a look that asked without words how much more of this I could stand. My father rested his hand on Ella's shoulder in a way that told me he was thinking of her first now, not anyone's theories. When the bill finally came, I offered to take Ella outside while they sorted out payment. I needed air, and she needed distance. We crossed the parking lot to a small park beside the restaurant, where a few trees stood and a single swing set creaked softly in the dim light. We sat on a wooden bench facing the playground. For a few minutes, we watched other children climb and slide, their laughter mixing with the muffled sounds from the restaurant behind us. Then Ella spoke, still looking ahead. She asked if it was true that we were open now. I asked her what she thought that meant. She said it sounded like her mother wanted another man and that maybe I would get another woman. She said some kids at school had parents who lived in different houses, and she did not want that to happen, but she also did not want her mother to be angry all the time. The words were simple, but they carried more weight than anything said at the table. I told her that grown-up relationships could get very confused when people stopped respecting agreements. I said that whatever happened, I would always be her father, and I would not choose to disappear from her life. I did not promise that everything would stay exactly the same, because I could not honestly guarantee that anymore. I promised instead that I would do everything I could to keep her safe and steady, even if the adults made mistakes. She nodded slowly, but I could see her shoulders still tense. She asked, almost in a whisper, if her mother loved someone else more than me now, and if that meant I had to go away so the open part could work. The question felt like a hand closing around my heart. I told her love was not supposed to work that way, and that no one should make a child feel like love meant watching a parent fade. I did not talk about Mark, or texts, or bars. I just told her that what she was feeling mattered, and that it was another reason I needed to think very carefully about what came next. When we returned home later, the apartment was quiet. Lena went straight to the bedroom to change, still talking into her phone, telling someone that dinner had been dramatic but necessary. Ella went to her room to draw. I walked into the kitchen and stood in front of the wall planner. There were birthdays and work shifts written in blue, school events in green, and near the bottom, a week with more white than ink. My hand moved almost on its own as I picked up the red pen from the counter. I circled a date in that empty week, pressing just hard enough that the ink line looked slightly deeper than the others. I did not write a word next to it. I just watched the circle close, a quiet promise to myself that by the time that day arrived, something would be different. As I put the pen down, I heard light footsteps behind me. Ella stood in the doorway holding her drawing. She looked at the red circle and asked if I was marking the day I was going to leave. Her voice was soft, but it cut through every layer of noise. I told her no, that I was marking the day I would stop pretending this was normal. Her eyes searched my face, trying to decide if that answer was good or bad, while the red ring on the planner seemed to glow brighter in the kitchen light. In the days after the red circle went onto the planner, my life quietly split into two layers. On top, there was still the normal rhythm everyone could see. I woke up, made breakfast, took Ella to school, went to work, came home, cooked, and helped with homework. Underneath, another version of me began to move in straight lines, collecting small pieces of our life and placing them where words and posts could not twist them. One evening after work, instead of going straight home, I went to a co-working cafe near the river. The room was full of people in headphones, bent over laptops, surrounded by the soft noise of coffee cups and low music. It felt like a place where everyone was quietly building something important. I chose a table in the corner, opened my laptop, and stared at the empty desktop for a while. Then I created a new main folder and named it with a short code only I understood. Inside it, I made 4 folders with simple labels: Home, Bank, Ella, Work. The words looked harmless on the screen, but they arranged my thoughts better than any long conversation. In Home, I copied screenshots of Lena's posts about our open future, the story where she said she was teaching me the language of open love, and the bar video where she told everyone I had accepted her connection with Mark. In Work, I added my events spreadsheet from the office, the one with dates, places, and short descriptions of what people said and shared. In Ella, I wrote a short text file with the date of the park bench, the restaurant, and the exact question she asked about whether I would have to go away so the open part could work. I did not write long explanations, only the plain sentences as she had said them. In bank, I placed simple things I already had: account summaries, lists of regular payments, notes about rent and school costs. When I finished moving the first set of files, a small window popped up in the corner of the screen saying that the sync had completed and that one file had been uploaded successfully. The words were ordinary, but for me, they felt like a small hand reaching out of the fog. Whatever happened to my reputation, these bits of our real life now lived somewhere beyond memory. I closed my eyes for a second and let the quiet hum of the cafe steady my breathing. After that, I plugged a small USB stick into the laptop. I had bought it months ago for work and never used it. Now I copied the main folder onto it and watched the progress bar slowly reach the end. When it finished, I removed the drive, slipped it into my pocket, and touched it with my fingertips as if to check that it was real. On my phone, I opened the calendar and looked again at the date I had circled in red at home. I set a new reminder a few days before it. I wrote only "meeting personal" at a small office near the harbor I had found while scrolling maps one night. I did not write who I might meet or what I might ask. Then I put on my headphones and made a call in a low voice on the sidewalk outside, asking general questions about what happened when a marriage stopped working and there was a child to think about. I did not give long stories about feelings. I asked about steps, about time, about how decisions were usually made. I took notes with calm fingers and saved them under a simple title: options. On my way home, I stopped at the supermarket. In the checkout line, a neighbor from our building got in behind me with a basket full of snacks and wine. She greeted me and said she had seen Lena's latest post about open love and brave hearts. She laughed and said I must be very relaxed to be okay with that kind of arrangement. She said most husbands would be jealous, but that I looked calm. I told her that people often posted big words online that did not match what everyone in the story actually agreed to. I added that if any serious changes happened in our life, I planned to handle them calmly and properly, not through jokes or stories. She nodded, but looked more interested in the show than in my answer. At home that evening, the apartment felt normal at first glance. Ella did homework at the table, Lena was on the couch scrolling her phone, I cooked dinner, and we talked about school projects and weekend plans. Later, after Ella went to bed, the doorbell rang. It was Mark. He had texted earlier, asking if he could drop by to watch a game on television together, the way we used to. I had almost said no, but then I thought about how many times I had tried to understand this new picture from the outside. Maybe it was time to look at it up close, even if it hurt. We sat in the living room. Lena moved between the kitchen and the couch, laughing and making comments about the game. Mark placed his phone on the coffee table beside a bowl of chips. At first, it was almost like old times. We talked about work and small things. Then Lena made a joke about how Mark understood her need for freedom better than I did. She said I was still updating my software when it came to openness. Mark gave a small smile and did not disagree. At one point, Lena stepped into the kitchen to get more drinks. Mark leaned back on the couch and picked up the remote. His phone buzzed on the table, the screen lighting up. I did not mean to look, but the bright screen was directly in front of me. A message slid across the top from a contact saved as Lena's full name with a heart. The text preview showed one short sentence. "Baby, tonight at my place?" My eyes ran over the words slowly. They were sharp and simple, like a small knife made of pixels. Mark saw my gaze land on the screen. His hand moved quickly, grabbing the phone. He locked it and then looked at me. His face lost color for a moment. He said, in a forced light tone, that this was just how they joked now, that it was all part of the open arrangement. He added that I knew how it was, since we had all talked about it. His voice shook slightly on the last words. I felt something inside me go very still. I said, in a low voice, that I had never agreed to my wife sending messages like that to my friend, and I had never agreed to him answering them. I told him that I understood now exactly what story Lena had told him about my supposed consent. I did not stand up or shout. I did not touch him. I just looked at him and said that from this moment, he should not hide behind my name to excuse anything he chose to do. The game went on in the background, loud and meaningless. After a few minutes of awkward silence, Mark said he needed to get up early and left earlier than planned. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I stayed on the couch, staring at the empty space where his phone had been. Later, Lena came back to the living room and asked where he had gone. I told her he had left. I saw her glance at the table, then quickly pick up her own phone. She turned the screen away from me as she checked something. I watched her jaw tighten for a second before she smoothed her expression and said everything was fine. I did not ask her about the message yet. Instead, I went to the small desk in the hallway and pulled open the drawer where we kept bills. Inside was a thin binder labeled Utilities. It looked harmless, but I had already begun slipping extra notes behind the usual papers. Lists of dates, printouts of our bank summaries, copies of my events spreadsheet. I slid the binder all the way to the back of the drawer and turned the small key, locking it with a soft sound. Then I went to the hall closet, took out an old taxes folder, and carefully taped the USB stick to the inside of the cardboard, closing it again so it looked untouched. When I came back to the kitchen, Lena stood at the counter, still with her phone in her hand. She said she did not like the way I had looked at Mark. She said I was making things awkward and that I was failing the test of being open-minded. She added that if I could not handle a few messages, maybe I should admit that I was not cut out for modern love. I listened to her words and then told her, as calmly as I could, that I was finished taking tests I had never agreed to. I said that if any formal steps were taken from now on, I would not shout, break anything, or try to control her movements. I would handle everything properly, with Ella's stability at the center. The word properly felt heavy and solid in my mouth, not like a threat, but like a line. At that exact moment, my phone buzzed on the table beside us. A soft alarm slid across the screen with the label, Paper Drop 9:05 a.m. I had set it days earlier, half abstract, but now it glowed like it belonged to this conversation. Lena saw it and asked what it meant. I dismissed the alarm with one thumb and put the phone back down. I said, in the same calm voice, that it was just a reminder to myself that some things in our life would no longer be handled in posts and whispers. Her eyes narrowed, trying to read more than I had said, while the echo of the alarm label stayed loud in my chest, pointing straight toward the red circle on the planner and whatever waited beyond it. The courthouse lobby smelled of old paper and cold air when I walked in. Lena stood near the benches with Mark beside her, arms folded like a guard. She said we could still fix the rules if I stopped being dramatic and accepted the open arrangement for real. I told her calmly that I had never agreed to share my marriage with my friend and that her baby tonight at my place text had ended any doubt. Then a man in a dark jacket approached, confirmed her full name, and handed her the divorce petition with temporary orders as the elevator bell chimed behind us.